Definitely too familiar with this feeling as a Calgary Flames fan. Would say this year in the playoffs we did put on a little more of a fight and actually had some hope compared to the series last year with the Colorado Avalanche. However, you still can't change the result that ultimately happened. And well, I'll recap here shortly as there was definitely a tale of a couple series and a couple moments could have changed the other way. Anyway, for the final time for this season, it's time for another episode of Hi there, it's Brett Hornby here. Welcome back to my YouTube channel and welcome back to another episode of my Calgary Flames in the Stanley Cup playoffs. This indeed will be the final episode of Season 2, episode number 18. As you can probably see in the tone at the beginning and on the thumbnail, we did not get past the Dallas Stars. As definitely I felt we had our chances in a couple of moments when I recap the series that I felt like we had a chance to still move on from the Dallas Stars, and I actually liked this matchup coming in for the Calgary Flames' chances of advancing into the second round. However, this feeling I've been too familiar with after winning the Stanley Cup in 1989, that the Calgary Flames have only gotten out of the first round twice in 31 years. And it's going to at least be 32 here. So we'll definitely talk about the series that the Calgary Flames and the Dallas Stars have had. I would say definitely was very interesting, and you could probably figure out one type of game favored one team more than the other given how the series played out here. So let's bring up my notes and let's recap the sad story of the Calgary Flames not getting past the Dallas Stars in the first round. So if we go all the way back to Game 1, this happened on Tuesday, August 11th, and the Calgary Flames started off technically as the road team, as I've kind of messed up in the previous video where it was 3-6, not 3-8, because I guess after the play-in series they reseeded everybody. So this was officially the 3-6 series, as Dallas was the 3 seed, Calgary was the 6 seed after the play-in series. So this game happened on, as I say, Tuesday, August 11th, on Rogers Place. All the games were in Edmonton with the hub city during COVID-19, and this game started at 3:30. And you can say it's the first ever meeting between the Calgary Flames and the Dallas Stars in the playoffs, if you don't count the 1981 Conference Championships, where the Calgary Flames were taking on the Minnesota North Stars then, and actually in that series, Calgary lost in 6 games. And actually, things did actually start off strong and looked good for the Calgary Flames. That proved my point that I felt this was the best matchup of the round-robin teams that the Calgary Flames could draw in the first round here, as Calgary did start off strong, outplayed Dallas. It looked like a continuation of the Winnipeg series, the play-in series, where Calgary kept the team outside, played physical, and it did look good early as Dylan Dubé. He definitely would say he had quite a big playoff, and definitely this game went to Dylan Dubé as he opened up the scoring for the Calgary Flames just before the 11-minute mark. So Calgary had a 1-0 lead at this point in the first period. Another storyline that we anticipated that got out of the way was Corey Perry and Matthew Tkachuk having a little battle here. And shortly after that goal, it was Matthew Tkachuk for Calgary and Corey Perry for the Dallas Stars fought, which you could say was expected at some point in the series, given both how the kind of games that both players play. Corey Perry is definitely a shell of his former self from his time with the Anaheim Ducks, but Matthew Tkachuk definitely loves the physical play and get our team's skin here, and he's definitely going to be a storyline in this series as we get to later. So later in the period, the Dylan Dubé show continued here. He definitely looked like he had a chance there where he could have gotten the second goal as he was set up nicely by Milan Lucic, but he couldn't connect. However, he did get a second of the game at the 18-minute mark, so Calgary had a 2-0 lead, and it was 2-0 Calgary after the first period here. So things were looking good for the Calgary Flames in Game 1 of the series. However, second period, I would say the Flames did play a complete game. However, there was 9 seconds that kind of changed the complexion of the game, as Dallas did score 2 goals in 9 seconds. First at the 11-minute mark around the 11-minute mark to tie the game. So in 9 seconds it was 2-0 and it was 2-2. First was Denis Gurianov, and we're definitely going to hear his name a lot in this series. Scores the first goal for the Dallas Stars in the series. And then Jamie Benn got one past Cam Talbot after winning that face-off from the Denis Gurianov goal. And it definitely looked like a little bit of a soft one that went past Cam Talbot that shook him up. And however, I did say Calgary did prevent Dallas from taking advantage of that from the rest of the way. So it was 2-2 at this point. And then once again, Calgary took the lead again as Rasmus Andersson rips a slap shot going into the Dallas Dome at the 16-minute mark. So Calgary had a 3-2 lead after the second period, and I felt like things were going well for the Calgary Flames at this point. Third period, I felt neither team pulled away in play. It was a balanced period. However, Cam Talbot definitely stood tall when he was called upon, and I would say Cam Talbot, he definitely proven that he made the right call to go with him in the playoffs. And definitely when I get to my final thoughts at the end of the recapping the series and talking about how the other series played out, you got to wonder what Cam Talbot's future has. And I would say he's done enough that we should re-up him and declare him as our number one goalie, but we'll get there. So ultimately, the Calgary Flames won Game 1 3-2 to take a 1-0 lead series lead here in the best of 7. The shots were 26 piece here, so both teams had 26 shots. Dylan Dubé led the way with the Calgary Flames with 2 goals. While Cam Talbot, he made 24 saves for Calgary, while Anton Khudobin, who was the goalie that started in Game 1, made 23 saves for Dallas. And on one sidebar we'll mention about this game here is in Toronto, where they hosted the Eastern Conference games. At the same time, 2.5 hours before the Calgary Flames Dallas game, Tampa Bay and Columbus were starting their first game of their series. And actually, just before puck drop, when the Calgary Flames and Dallas Stars played, that game was going into overtime. And then after, when the Calgary Flames and Dallas Stars game finished, Tampa Bay and Columbus, they were in the intermission after playing their third overtime. Ultimately, the Tampa Bay Lightning won Game 1 in the 5th overtime period, and definitely turned out to be the 4th longest game in NHL history. So I just wanted to throw that in as well, that to put it in perspective how long that game was. The game was 2.5 hours earlier, and I'll tell you what happened was that the scheduled game between Boston and Carolina were scheduled to play after the Tampa Bay Columbus game. That game got pushed until the next day, and fittingly, that game needed some overtime as well. So interesting sidebar to put in there that, while this game was played fully, we needed like 2.5 games in one because of the long overtime. So that was Game 1. So Game 2, this happened on Thursday, August the 13th, and this was an 8 p.m. puck drop at Rogers Place, and this game set the tone for the rest of the series, as I would say, because it could either have been 2-0 for Calgary or tied at 1-1 when the team switched sides. And also, this was a different kind of game. And there was one storyline that happened that became a storyline for the rest of the series. First, Calgary actually got a quick goal as Dylan Dubé. He scored 19 seconds in the game. So Calgary, just like that, was up 1-0 and things were looking good at this point here. However, Dallas did strike back a couple minutes later as Alexander Radulov for Dallas ties up the game at 1-1. I would say Dallas was the better team of the two to start, as they outplayed Calgary for much of the period. Then Dallas got their first lead of the game and the series, as Miro Heiskanen, another player that had a big series for the Dallas Stars puts Dallas up 2-1 past the 11-minute mark, and then Dallas maintains a 2-1 lead after the first period. Should also mention that Matthew Tkachuk gets shaken up in one play. He did leave the ice, but he did return. However, we'll talk about Matthew Tkachuk a little later in this game. Second period, Dallas continued their strong play, and it was Miro Heiskanen who scored his second of the game just before the 5-minute mark. So Dallas is now up 3-1. Calgary did get back within one, as Derek Forbert, a defenseman who doesn't score very often, scores at the 13-minute mark, but Corey Perry just over 2 minutes later gives Dallas the 2-goal lead again to make it 4-2, and Dallas led 4-2 after the second period. However, third period, just before the 5-minute mark, I would say possibly one of the turning points of the series happened, was Matthew Tkachuk took a hit between two Jamie Benn and Jamie Alexiak, and he did not return. So definitely was one of our key pieces of the Flames is out. Key play in offense and physical play. That definitely changed the complexion of the game and series, as we'll talk about. Calgary was fighting back in the third period, however, and did rally with a couple goals of their own. First, while shorthanded on a Mark Giordano penalty, it was Tobias Rieder who scored his second of the playoffs, both shorthanded, as he scored his first shorthanded goal in Game 1 of the Winnipeg series, in the play-in series, to make it 4-3 for Dallas, just around the 12.5-minute mark. Then on the power play, another player that I'm going to say is still worth keeping, who has played well in the playoffs for Calgary, is Sam Bennett, as he ties up the game just past the 17-minute mark. So we had a 4-4 game. As the game was winding down into the final minute, tied, we were thinking, I was going to say this one needs overtime. However, it was Jamie Alexiak for Dallas who scores to give him a 5-4 lead in the final minute, and Dallas ultimately wins Game 2 to tie the series at 1-1 with a 5-4 lead here, and a 5-4 win, I should say. Definitely, it seems like, as we'll see in the series, that games that turn out to be a track meet seems to favor the Dallas Stars a lot more than the Calgary Flames, as the Calgary Flames definitely want to keep things more defensive. But that definitely didn't turn out to be as much the case in Game 2. Dallas also outshot the Calgary Flames 36-26. Overall, Dallas, I would say there was no one in Calgary that led to had more than 1 point. A multi-point game, Dallas was led by Miro Heiskanen, who had 2 goals in this game. Dallas was led by Corey Perry and Alexander Radulov, who each had a goal and assist. And then John Klingberg, another defenseman, I would say, had a big series for the Dallas Stars, had 2 assists. Cam Talbot, both goalies made big games here. Cam Talbot made 31 saves for Calgary, while Ben Bishop, who actually was in net for Dallas, made 22 saves. And I felt Calgary definitely could have had opportunities to, put Dallas away. And Ben Bishop actually, historically, has struggled against the Calgary Flames. So definitely, there was a couple what-ifs in this one. However, both teams didn't have long to think about what happened. As Game 3, this happened on the next night, on Friday, August the 14th. Both teams switched sides, as now Calgary's the home team. This was an 8:30 puck drop at Rogers Place. And this game featured no Matthew Tkachuk for the Calgary Flames. And definitely, we'll find out later in the series, we definitely missed Matthew Tkachuk. It was Alan Quine who actually drew into the lineup for the Calgary Flames without Matthew Tkachuk. First period, Calgary did have the edge in the play, but no scoring in the port, so it was no scoring after the first period. Second period, Dallas really had the edge in shots as they outplayed Calgary. Actually, Calgary was outshot 16-4, as Dallas put up a big 16-4 clinic against the Calgary Flames. However, Cam Talbot was up to the task and kept Dallas off of the scoreboard. Despite the fact that the Dallas Stars outshot the Calgary Flames badly in the second period, Calgary did score the first goal and was on a shorthanded on a Zach Rinaldo penalty, as Michael Bachman, another player that I'd say had a good playoff for the Calgary Flames, made it 1-0 just before the 6-minute mark. And then Calgary actually got up 2-0, so Calgary only took 4 shots in the second period, but 2 of them were goals. This time TJ Brody scores on the slap shot past the 10.5-minute mark in the Dallas zone. And Calgary had a 2-0 lead, and despite being outshot and outplayed, Calgary actually had a 2-0 lead after the second period. Third period, I felt Dallas kept pushing back, but Calgary had a better period and maintained the lead. Also, Cam Talbot was strong at periods, and Calgary was able to keep Dallas outside. So Calgary actually ultimately won this game 2-0, and now they take a 2-1 series lead after Game 3 on the back of Cam Talbot. And without Matthew Tkachuk in the lineup, is definitely we saw a little less physical play because Matthew Tkachuk was not a factor because he was out of the lineup. Dallas did outshoot Calgary 35-23, including that 16-4 second period. Cam Talbot made 35 saves in the shutout, which was his second of this year's playoffs and fourth overall. As you recall, Cam Talbot had a shutout in Game 4 in the play-in series against the Winnipeg Jets, which clinched the series to set up this series. And Tkachuk, who was back in net for the Dallas Stars, he made 21 saves for Dallas. So that was Game 3. Calgary up 2-1. Game 4, I was about to say, this was a chance for Calgary to take a 3-1 series lead and be in really good shape to eventually advance into the second round. And we were still Matthew Tkachuk-less in this one, and we got Potter in this game what could have been, as there were a couple moments here that could have swung the series either way. I would say that could have either made it 2-2 or 3-1 for Calgary. First period, I'd say both teams came out strong, and it was more of a wide open game. So definitely would say, as I felt, if the game was more wide open, even though Dallas is a funny team being known for stringy on the defense and struggling to score goals, they definitely seemed to have no problem scoring goals in the series. First goal of the game did not get passed until the 18-minute mark, because actually for the first time in the series, and I believe if you count the round robin and the games before the pause, this was the first time in 10 games that Dallas scored first. As Joe Pavelski, another player that definitely is showing up in the past big time for the playoffs with his San Jose days, scores on the power play at the 18-minute mark to make it 1-0 for Dallas, and that was a 1-0 lead for Dallas after the first period. Second period, Calgary had an early power play, and it was Johnny Gaudreau, one player that we might be talking about a lot here and possibly in the offseason. He ties up the game to make it 1-1 at the 2-minute mark. However, just over a minute later, Dallas retakes the lead as Joe Pavelski got his second to make it 2-1, just past the 3-minute mark. However, on the power play, Sam Bennett, who ties it up for Calgary 43 seconds later, so just after the 4-minute mark of the second period, it was a 2-2 game. After 3 goals in the first 4 minutes, things did settle down for a bit and both teams had chances. Sam Bennett got his second of the game to put Calgary up 3-2 just before the 15-minute mark, and Calgary had a lead late in the second period. However, Calgary took a penalty at the 18-minute mark, and it was Dallas who took advantage of it, as Dennis Gurianov, which another player will hear a lot of later, scores with 37 seconds left in the third period, or the second period, to make it 3-3, and now it was a 3-3 game going into the third period, so I meant to say. Third period, Dallas was really pushing back and outplayed Calgary as they were looking to tie up the series, because we're at this pivotal point where it could either be 3-1 Calgary or 2-2 Dallas tied up to 2-2 and need at least 6 games here. However, early in the third period, it was Tobias Rieder again who scores, and you guessed it, he also scored shorthanded past the 3-minute mark, and it was his third of the playoffs, which tied an NHL record for shorthanded playoff goals in the same playoffs. So that definitely is interesting, and I would say it's another player that I would say is worth keeping around for the Calgary Flames, Tobias Rieder, especially for given he's a threat, big on the penalty kill and a threat to score on the penalty kill. So Calgary maintained the lead for most of the third period, even though Dallas was pressing back, and they felt like it was a matter of time before they tied up, because it was 4-3 at this point after the Tobias Rieder goal. However, with just under 3 minutes left in the third period, it looked like Jason Dickinson for Dallas tied up the game at 4 apiece. However, it was reviewed and it was called for goaltender interference by Corey Perry. So that wiped out that potential tying goal for Dallas. So Calgary still maintained a 4-3 lead going into the final minutes of the third period. However, attacking in the Calgary zone with the goalie pulled, Dallas was able to tie it up with 12 seconds left by Joe Pavelski. Scored his third of the game, so you got the hat trick. So it looked like Calgary was about to hang on and to take a potential 3-1 series lead. It was Joe Pavelski that scored and tied the game at 4-4. And as I like to say, begrudgingly, this one needs overtime. She also mentioned, I'll give you an idea how badly Dallas outplayed Calgary in the third period. Dallas outshot Calgary 21-6 in the third period alone. In overtime, I would say Dallas continued to have the edge in play. However, Calgary did have a few chances of their own, including a Johnny Gaudreau shot that didn't get past Anton Khudobin. However, just past the 16-minute mark of the overtime, after hitting the post, there was Alexander Radulov who scores to take the game 5-4 and to tie up the series at 2-2 here. So now at least we need 6 games, and now essentially the series is cut down to a best of 3. As now we have a 2-2 tied series, and Calgary was 12 seconds away from potentially taking a 3-1 series lead. However, I would say that moment could have been the turning point of the series, as well losing Matthew Tkachuk, as we'll keep saying, Matthew Tkachuk did not get to play as well in the series after Game 2. Dallas overall outshot Calgary 62-40, including 12-5 in the overtime period, in addition to the 21-6 in the third period alone. There were definitely a lot of players that got a highlight on both sides of the puck. Well, Calgary Sam Bennett led the way with 2 goals and an assist. Johnny Gaudreau had a goal and assist, as well as Sean Monahan chipped in with 2 assists. However, I would say the first star definitely goes to Joe Pavelski, who scored 3 goals for the hat-trick, including the clutch goal with 12 seconds to go. John Klingberg also chipped in with 3 assists, and Tyler Seguin also chipped in with 2 assists. Cam Talbot, he definitely was the busier goalie. He made 57 saves for Calgary, while Anton Khudobin, he made 36 saves for the Dallas Stars. In case if you're wondering, and Cam Talbot had the second most saves in a Flames game in history. It actually was Reggie Lemelin, who made 61 saves in a playoff game, also back in 1981 when we played Chicago in the first round. That game, the Calgary Flames won 5-4 in double overtime. So Cam Talbot almost made some history in terms of the number of saves he made in a game here, but Reggie Lemelin still owns that record for franchise record for most saves in a game back in 1981. Another 1981 connection here. So that was Game 4. So after that crazy Game 4, here we are off to Game 5. This happened on Tuesday, August the 18th, and this game ultimately was scheduled late in the afternoon, as the Game 4 was started at noon. Game 5 started at 3:30, all at Rogers Place, and once again teams switched side, as now Dallas is considered the home team. And first period, Dallas had the edge in play and came out as the better team. Calgary still Matthew Tkachuk, which is definitely showing more and more that missed him in the lineup. As the word is that I think he had a concussion in that hit from Game 2. There was no official word, as the league has been kind of disclosing injuries, but or you hear this, not body injury, but unfit to play. So that was a speculation why Matthew Tkachuk was not available for the rest of the series. Dallas did open up the scoring just past the 10-minute mark, as Jamie Benn scores shorthanded, and Dallas takes a 1-0 lead. There were definitely a lot of special teams moments taken advantage of on both sides of the puck in the series. However, Calgary did press back late, as in going into the final minute of the first period. It was Michael Bachman who got his 4th of the playoffs with 46 seconds to go to tie the game at 1-1. However, Dallas did head a post the other way before the end of the first period. So it was 1-1 game after the first period. Second period, Dallas continued a strong play, but there was no scoring to report, as Cam Talbot kept Calgary in the game. As the game was still 1-1 after the second period. And then the second period, after this point, Dallas actually outshot Calgary 26-14. So Cam Talbot definitely was the busier goalie of the two in the series. Third period, Calgary did come back, better team, but didn't have any puck luck, as there were definitely some posts on both sides here. But I felt after when Dallas first got their goal to make up 2-1 past the first minute, as John Klingberg scores to put Dallas up. There were a few posts on both sides, but I felt Calgary definitely pressed back strong in the third period after being outplayed in the first 2 periods. However, Calgary was not able to get the tying goal, and even the late power play didn't help. So Dallas ultimately held on to win 2-1, and now they lead 3-2 in the series, forcing Game 6 to be an elimination game for the Calgary Flames. Overall, actually, Calgary did close the shot gap, as Dallas outshot Calgary 32-29, after Calgary actually had an edge in shots 15-6 in the third period. We definitely had an A for effort, but we definitely didn't get any puck luck or get that tying goal or even go ahead to be up 3-2 instead. But Dallas is up 3-2. Cam Talbot, he made 30 saves for the Calgary Flames, while Anton Khudobin, he made 28 saves for the Dallas Stars. So Game 6, this happened on Thursday, August the 20th. This was an 8:30 puck drop at Rogers Place, and this was a crazy game here, and definitely Calgary needed to win to force a Game 7, but you probably already know that was not meant to be. But it's still frustrating, and definitely this is another first-round heartbreak because we had hope. We felt like we had hope here, especially early. As Calgary needed to win, we were still Matthew Tkachuk, and we definitely missed in the lineup. And there's one iconic image that he was up in the press box frustrated at how the game went for the Calgary Flames. As I first say, should have coughed later, but I needed to cough now. Things actually looked good early for the Calgary as they scored 3 goals in the first period to take a 3-0 lead. Then after, that's when the coughing happened. Literally, first it was Andrew Mangiapane just past the 3.5 minute mark to score the first goal. Then Johnny Gaudreau on the power play 2 minutes later, and then Rasmus Andersson a minute later. So Calgary had a 3-0 lead at the 6.5 minute mark of the first period. And thinking, hey, this is looking good. We responded. We're facing elimination. We'll force a Game 7 and anything can happen. However, things did settle down as Dallas called a timeout. And then ultimately Dallas started chipping away at the lead, and that's where the coughing would start happening. As Calgary led on the power play, but it was 9.5 minute mark, as it was Miro Heiskanen who scores for Dallas to make it 3-1 game for Calgary. Calgary still had the edge in play, I felt, in the first period. But things definitely began to change in the second period where we really coughed up big time. Second period, Dallas tied up the game by the 3.5 minute mark. So going into the second period, it was only 3.5 minutes in. Just like that, it was 3-3. Let's just say it was the Darren Escariano show as he scored 2 goals in the third period. His first one came just a minute in and just before the 3.5 minute mark. So just like that, it is now a 3-3 game. Calgary called a timeout, and we definitely have to question this decision as Dallas. They did not replace Anton Khudobin after Calgary scored 3 goals in the first 6.5 minutes. However, Calgary decided to change goalies after this point here. So Cam Talbot came out, David Rittich came in on the second period. Keep in mind, David Rittich has not played a regular season game, and he only played that half game in the exhibition game against the Edmonton Oilers whenever team had their one exhibition game. So we brought in a cold goalie after Cam Talbot was in the zone. That didn't seem to help much, or might make things worse here, as Dallas got in the lead on the power play just over 2 minutes later, as Radek Vaska makes it now a 4-3 game. And then Joe Pavelski makes it a 5-3 Dallas lead just before the 7.5 minute mark. So we came into the period, Calgary up 3-1. Now 7.5 minutes in, after we allowed 2 quick goals in the first 3.5 minutes, and then 4 minutes played later, after we decided to change goalies, it is now a 5-3 game. And then Dennis Garinoff gets the hat trick at the 15.5 minute mark of the second period to make it 6-3 for Dallas at this point. Calgary couldn't find a goal just for the intermission because the way this game was going, if Calgary would have gotten a goal to at least make it a 6-4 Dallas game, I felt that maybe there would be some hope. However, Dallas led 6-3 after the second period, so Calgary had a 3-1 lead. They scored the first 3 goals of the game in 6.5 minutes, and that might have been a problem that maybe what Edmonton faced when they played Chicago in their playing series, that Edmonton twice scored quickly and fast, and then Chicago came back. So this was almost reminding me of that. However, Calgary, despite the fact getting the goals against, actually outplayed Dallas, which is what makes this game really weird. So going into the third period, well, Cam Talbot got back in net for Calgary after David Rittich didn't play much in relief, but he was a cold goalie that hasn't faced game action in months, which I felt that was still a questionable decision because Dallas didn't change goalies after they called their timeout of Calgary to quick start. So Calgary still did play out Dallas, but they couldn't find any time goals. And then ultimately, Dennis Gurianov got his fourth of the game, just past the 9-minute mark to make it 7-3 for Dallas. And ultimately, you knew the rain was all on the wall for the Calgary Flames as Dallas ultimately wins this game 7-3 and ultimately win the series 4-2 in this best of 7 first round matchup. Calgary did actually outshoot Dallas 41-24 despite being destroyed on the scoreboard. So there was no one that could highlight that led the way for the Calgary Flames with multiple games. However, Dennis Gurianov, 4 goals and 1 assist. Miro Heiskanen had a goal and 3 assists. Joe Pavelski had a goal and 2 assists. So definitely some of the key players for Dallas, especially the young players, definitely have showed up. And we didn't mention Tyler Seguin much, as he definitely had a rough series where he definitely was snake bitten. However, there was not too many big names for Calgary that I mentioned in some of these must-win games, like Johnny, Sean, or we definitely missed Matthew Tkachuk, but definitely going to be going to my final thoughts. So when it comes to the goaltending situation, well, Cam Talbot, he made 11 saves on 15 shots. I mean, Calgary only allowed 5 shots in the first period. And then Dave Riddick, he made 6 saves and 9 shots. That was all in the second period. So I think in retrospect, if we can go back in time, we would have kept Cam Talbot in net and might have been a different game. Well, Anton Khudobin, he made 38 saves for the Dallas Stars. So once again, we have another first-round heartbreak on our hands, and we definitely got some interesting decisions to make. And I'll get to that part. So let's get around to the NHL and look at all the other series, because as of this recording, actually, as it turned out, in the first round, there were no sweeps, but no Game 7. So we know all the matchups that's going into the second round. So let's go out to the Eastern Conference first. For the 1-8 matchup, it was the Philadelphia Flyers. They beat the Montreal Canadiens 4-2. And then in the 2-7 series, you got the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Columbus Blue Jackets. Well, the Tampa Bay Lightning won that series 4-1, but you could say they played 3 games in Game 1 with the 5 overtime game, the 4th longest game in NHL history. And then you could say maybe the first upset of the playoffs. The New York Islanders knocked off the Washington Capitals 4-1 in the 6-3. And then the Boston Bruins got past the Carolina Hurricanes 4-1 in the 4-5 series. So keep in mind that everybody gets reseeded after the first round, the old conference format. So the second round in the Eastern Conference will feature the Philadelphia Flyers and the New York Islanders 1-6. And the Tampa Bay Lightning will be taking on the Boston Bruins 2-4. So that was the Eastern Conference. So now if we go out to the Western Conference, well, Vegas for the 1-8 did easily get past the Chicago Blackhawks 4-1. And then Colorado definitely easily got past the Arizona Coyotes for the 2-7, 4-1. I'm going to say in Game 3, Darcy Kemper was definitely the reason why Arizona did not get swept. But in Games 4 and 5, Colorado outscored Arizona 14-2, where they both won 7-1. So that was 4-1. And then this series we just talked about, the Dallas Stars beat the Calgary Flames 4-2. And then you could say the other upset in the playoffs, the Vancouver Canucks, they eliminated the defending Stanley Cup champions, the St. Louis Blues, in the 4-5 series, 4-2. So for the Western Conference Round 2 matchups, you'll have Vegas playing Vancouver, the battle of the V teams, 1-5, and then the Colorado Avalanche will be taking on the Dallas Stars. So that's the series that also going around the NHL. So now let's look at some player stats and maybe debate on when I get into my final thoughts on what decisions the Calgary Flames could make here. So when it comes to goals, well, Sam Bennett actually led the team in goals in the playoffs with 5, and then you have Johnny Gaudreau, Michael Bachman, Dylan Dubé, all each had 4 goals each. And then you had Rasmus Anderson and Tobias Rieder rounding up the top 5 with 3 goals. And then when it comes to assists, well, Sean Monahan had 6 assists, and then Milan Lucic had 5 assists, and then Elias Lindholm, Eric Gustafsson, and Noah Hanifin all each had 4 assists. So when it comes to points, well, Sam Bennett and Sean Monahan each tied with 8 points in the playoffs. That includes the Plains series and Dallas series. Johnny Gaudreau had 7 points, and then you have Michael Bachman and Milan Lucic each having 6 assists, and then you got Dylan Dubé, Rasmussen, and Tobias Reeder, and Andrew Mangiapane always 5 assists. So definitely, offense got spread out, but there might still be a few question marks on what we could do with some personnel, and we also have some free agent decisions to make. So when it comes to Cam Talbot, his numbers were pretty good for the playoffs. As in the 10 games, he was 5-4. His goals against average was .242 and a save percentage of .924, and that save percentage took a little bit of a beating in game 6, and he had 2 shutouts. Well, David Riddick, he only played in that 16 minutes in the game 6 here. He actually gets credited with the loss because he was in net for that time when Dallas scored the winning goal. His goals against average is .1085 and saves at .667. That's his only NHL experience. So that's the goaltending story. So that is the player stats. Or recap the series and find out the matchups that we'll have going into the second round. But let's talk about some off-season decisions to make. As once again, the Calgary Flames, I'm going to say they're done rebuilding. As we definitely have pieces and showing signs that we can be a competitive team and potentially a contender. However, it's just in-out playoffs. However, you can say we made the playoffs in back-to-back seasons, and I felt the Flames were going to make the playoffs before COVID happened, where things got shut down, and while we're still talking about a playoff series in the third week of August and only in the first round of the playoffs, as now the schedules came out for the second round, it's going to take up to Labor Day weekend to wrap up the second round if any series go to 7 games. However, I'm going to say definitely Dylan Dubé, I would say definitely has had his coming out party. Cam Talbot, we definitely going to have to decide if are we going to keep him. We only signed him to a 1-year deal. Dave Riddick is still under contract. However, based on going to Cam Talbot in the playoffs, we've seen the vision that he's the better goalie, and could we decide to keep him? I definitely say we should. Got to figure out what the price is. And we definitely missed Matthew Tkachuk and Milan Lucic. He definitely also played big for us in the playoffs at points. But the elephant in the room is definitely Sean Monahan and Johnny Gaudreau. I have a feeling that we might need to make a decision on one of our top key players. And some teams that, are still flirting with trying to be a contender and taking that next step might need to make a trade. And I definitely figure that it might be time to consider worth shopping Johnny Gaudreau around. Sean Monahan might potentially give us a bigger return. When you look at the fact that he's a center, he has 1 year younger and a little less on his contract. But we definitely have an abundance of wingers. And if we trade Sean Monahan, then Michael Bachman would be our number 1 center tonight. I like Michael Bachman where he is as a second center. So I would consider possibly looking at trading Johnny Gaudreau. See what we can get for him. Because I think Calgary definitely needs a few more, maybe some more depth that could, especially as proven in the playoffs. I know Gaudreau had a better playoffs than he did last year against Colorado. And then some people figure that Sam Bennett, he needs a change. So I want to keep Bennett, as he definitely plays that grit. He's reinvented his game to be in the bottom 6-4. He's perfect on the bottom lines, and he delivered in the playoffs at points, and also the fact that he was one of the few forwards that delivered for the Calgary Flames in the Colorado series last year. But I know Michael Bachman definitely, I'm going to say this playoff run might still give him a little more conversation that maybe he can get closer to the Patrice Bergeron being one of the better two-way forwards in the game. So Michael Bachman definitely shown that he could still, be a valuable member of the team. And Andrew Mangiapane, I would definitely say, has picked up since the Michael Frolik trade, being in the top 6. And obviously we missed Matthew Tkachuk, but that's where I figure that maybe, possibly shopping around Johnny Gaudreau. And he also said that he could see himself possibly maybe wanting to play closer to home. So definitely, could we possibly look at maybe going to shopping in the Philadelphia or Jersey? And maybe also if we make a trade to trade away Johnny Gaudreau, could we also maybe go make a play on Taylor Hall? But he didn't make a much of an impact for the Arizona Coyotes either, especially in their elimination games. But that's definitely a conversation that needs to be had. And then we're just talking about the forwards. Defense, we also have some interesting decisions where, well, TJ Brody's an unrestricted free agent. Same with Travis Hamonic, but he opted out in return to play, so he wasn't available at all. Then also you got Eric Gustafsson and Derek Forbert, the two defensemen that we required at the deadline. Well, I definitely got to say I'd like to keep Eric Gustafsson around for the power play, especially if we have to make a decision on potentially Hamonic or Brody. And Eric Gustafsson definitely showed some points that he can actually take some pucks, and he definitely in one game he definitely had a shift where he took a couple pucks. And Eric Gustafsson definitely chipped in with a couple assists. And I know Michael Stone's the other defenseman, but he was only here because of Juuso Välimäki. And the beauty now that Juuso Välimäki did not play this season and in the playoffs, we don't have to worry about protecting him or him being exposed in the Seattle Kraken draft. And then you also got to wonder about Mark Giordano, as he definitely didn't look like the same Mark Giordano that won the Norris Trophy last year. He definitely looked ordinary at best, and definitely with some of the games where we were outshot, there might be some tinkering that we need to do in the lineup and maybe inject some youth. And there's definitely some decisions to make. And then the last one is the coach. Is Jeff Ward going to be officially deemed the head coach? As I feel he's done enough to warrant be named the head coach. However, I'm still tempted to knock on the door for Peter Laviolette or Gerard Gerland, because I almost feel like that maybe Calgary needs a coach like that to get this team to the next level with some personnel decisions. But that's definitely just my final thoughts. And I mean, fortunately, another first-round heartbreak. I know some fans try to console me, and I've tried to say don't worry, I'm a Leaf fan. I know the Leafs definitely have had tough go at it, as well as they have not won a first-round series since 2004. And have not been to the finals or even won a Stanley Cup since 1967. But the Calgary Flames, they're approaching Leafs territory, as we haven't won the Stanley Cup since 1989. Officially, we can still debate about 2004. However, since 1989, Calgary's only gotten out of the first round twice, in 2004 and in 2015. And I felt like we had the chance to do that. And definitely the Matthew Tkachuk injury, but we couldn't hold on leads late. Or we couldn't hold on in Game 2, or that game could have gone to overtime. And man, we definitely couldn't hold on in Game 4 to steal one, to take a 3-1 series lead, and that would have changed the complexion of the series. But what's your thought on the Flames Stars series? I felt we did play a lot better than we did against Colorado last year, but that wouldn't take much. But there were definitely some times we left the Dallas Stars off the hook, and it paid us in the end. And then once again, this history of not performing in the playoffs seems to be continue, and it's definitely another first-round heartbreak. I'm just too familiar with it, and definitely get tired of it after a while. And I mean, that's why I really enjoyed 2004, where when we scored that goal against Vancouver, I was exploding with joy, and still gotta apologize to people for that, but that was sweet. And then same with 2015. I mean, I was drunk in Game 6, but that was just a wild game, like Game 5 in this series, or Game 6, I should say. But that's just my final thoughts, and I'm going to say for any video plans, well, it's definitely going to be a thinner for Calgary sports for the next few months, because, well, hockey is over, and it's not going to sound like that hockey is going to come back, at least until December, both with the Flames and Hitman. And then in a separate video, I'll talk about the CFL season, the 2020 CFL season. Officially got canceled, so there won't be any CFL games to talk about. And then Calgary Roughnecks, well, their season does not start till November or December, and we haven't heard anything yet about anything about the Roughnecks yet. Or I'm still wondering about, will fans be allowed to go to the game? And same with hockey in December. But I'll definitely still be making videos with my secondary content I remember the Calgary series as well. If any off-season news, obviously I still got the draft, free agent frenzy, and maybe any big trades that the Calgary Flames make, or if they just whatever they decide to do with Jeff Ward. Is he going to be the coach, or could we bring in someone else? And I am very tempted to reach out to Pierre Laviolette or Jared Gallant to become the head coach for. I think that's someone that Calgary needs to get this team to the next level. As Pierre Laviolette, he has a Stanley Cup with the Carolina Hurricanes. He's been to the finals with the Philadelphia Flyers, and he's been to the finals with the Nashville Predators. And then Gerard Gallant, he definitely molded a Vegas team, which you're still going to wonder why Vegas made that decision and led them to the Stanley Cup Finals in 2018. Jeff Ward was on the Boston Bruins coaching staff when they won the Stanley Cup in 2011, and was on the staff when they went to the finals in 2013. But there's definitely some decisions to make. Plus, the salary cap's going to stay flat given what's been going on here. So that's my Calgary Flames in the Stanley Cup playoffs, and definitely a lot to take in. But sadly, the off season's starting a little earlier than I want here. But this was definitely a crazy season too. TJ Brody collapsed on the ice. The Bill Peters story. And COVID happened. All this to celebrate our 40th anniversary season. So anyway, if you want to follow along with this Calgary sports fan's journey, home the Flames, Hitmen, the Roughnecks, and Stampeders. I mostly talk Calgary sports on this channel, and despite what's been going on, it was definitely nice to actually talk games and talk games happy. And I wish, obviously, for a different result, but at least hockey's back, and I'll still enjoy the rest of the Stanley Cup playoffs. And I think I'm 5 for 8 when it comes to my bracket for teams that I have right going on, and I still got Tampa Bay and Colorado, who I think is going to be in the finals, and Tampa Bay to win the Cup. But that's my bracket, and of course the NBA playoffs and Major League Baseball is limping along. I also do personal vlogs, attempt to comedy, and I also do share my experience. Let's say I'm on the road at a sporting event, so if that also would be interesting to watch. To follow along with this Calgary sports fan's journey, what you need to do, just make sure you hit like, subscribe. I also have my other social media links down in the description below. So this is it for Season 2. Recapping the Calgary Flames, if I'm still going to continue on doing this. I guess Season 3, if I do decide, see any update videos. I guess that's not going to start till December, as that's what the early plan is for the 2020-21 season to start. What still remains to be seen. Is it still going to be the bubble models, or traveling into arenas with fans? That's still up in the air. However, the big number has been 0, as there have been 0 COVID cases in the NHL, as well as the NBA bubble. And now that we're down into the final 8, as there's 4 teams remaining in Edmonton and 4 teams remaining in Toronto, and then keep in mind after the second round, whoever comes out there, those 2 teams will move shop and go to Edmonton, and Edmonton will host all the conference championships and the Stanley Cup Finals. Sadly, not going to be the Calgary Flames, but it is what it is. So hopefully you enjoy all my content and enjoyed Season 2. It's definitely been longer than needed, or definitely turned out to be longer than you thought, but things have happened this year. So, as I say, go Flames go. I'll keep living on, and if I ever around and appreciate another Stanley Cup win. It definitely was too young to appreciate it back in 1989, but so I keep soldiering on. So go Flames go, and I'll see you in the next video, and thanks for watching, and hopefully sooner rather than later the Sea of Red can reassemble in traditional form again, hopefully for Season 3 whenever that season will start for 2020-21. So I'll see you then.